Hello, good afternoon. First of all, I would like to point out that if you see the program, the agenda, Neus Cross was the speaker for this conference, but I'm here to replace her as she is abroad. The other members that have worked in the presentation belong to the University of Girona, the university of this city, and I belong to the humanities faculty. We have divided this presentation. As you will see, I will be watching the slides a lot, looking at the slides, because Neus had prepared the presentation, not me. So I'm sorry to do this because it's a lack of respect towards you, but that's the best I can do. So we have three parts in the presentation. First of all, there will be an introduction with the main aims and the methodology. Then we will present the conceptual framework. Then the main axis of the study will be the practitioner's experiences. And finally, discussion. What are the objectives? The idea was to gather data through the internet about practitioners that have taken ayahuasca, gringos that have traveled to Peru to have this experience. We will describe their motivations, why they went there, and the effect they had. As you will see, if we compare to other presentations in this Congress, our study is an external study. Concerning methodology, we have gathered data and we have done a qualitative research with in-depth interviews and also with blog analysis.
Al marco conceptual, hemos intentado establecer a través.
Okay, conceptual framework. Through these different experiences, we've tried to extract a series of stages in the ayahuasca use experience. We've also tried to distinguish what emotion tourism is, and what are the steps that are necessary in order to have good experiences. The stages of a journey. Gringos that have went to South America to take ayahuasca. In most of the cases, there's been a previous situation, like a pre-setting where the images and stereotypes were very much involved, and what ayahuasca is in Latin America and South America. Also anticipation of the effects. Most of them knew what ayahuasca was, and in theory, what effects it caused. This implied that they had done some information search, and that the data that they had found were reliable, and they had drawn some plans and some arrangements. The journey, per se, they recognized the place. First and foremost, many of the information that they gathered beforehand, they make real there. They realize that some parts are authentic, some are not. Then the contact with the exotic other, the shaman, etc., from the point of view of the Westerners, in inverted commas, Westerners. All the complications, practicalities, about the trip there, logistics, accommodation, arriving there, getting settled, etc. And the most impacting part of it is the post-journey when they go back home in Europe, basically. So memories of the experience, the elaboration of the images that they had in mind, the stereotypes that they had arrived there with, and most of the cases they use word of mouth. They tell their relatives and their friends what they experienced and how their life changed, also inside their imaginary. Let's go to emotional tourism now. You know that in the recent decade, there's this movement that tries to establish a new criterion of what tourism is based on experience and based on emotional involvement, emotional engagement. One part is authentic, so there's this seek for deeper emotions, and there's also tourism related marketing in the sense that products might be sold more easily. So they look for tourism travel as an extraordinary moment or experience. So it's not just about going abroad just for the sake of it, but it's about gathering experiences. We have established a sort of bridge between what we call pilgrimage tourism with certain spiritual, religious foundation, and also cultural tourism. In both cases, the experience is what matters and where the emphasis is made. The experience needs to be deep and meaningful. It needs to involve some personal growth by the person living it, especially in the case of ayahuasca users. And if you remember the previous framework that I showed before, here's the set and setting. The preparation they have to work on for the experience to be fulfilling and good, because it is believed that the substance creates a physical change, but as important is the rest of the elements that surround the experience, as is the mindset, meaning it needs to be open. You need to allow for openness and work on your previous background. Also, the social environment, the place needs to be comfort and safe, and they need to feel at ease in these experiences with psychedelics. It's important to take into account the place and the people that you are accompanied by. Let's go now to the body of information that's more compact here in this presentation, meaning the experiences that we have gathered together from different people. Basically, 2 in-depth interviews, and these are easy to find on the internet, and 5 blogs. We have split the experiences by these people in 5 sections. 1, taking the decision. 2, preparing the journey. 3, facilitators and care to enjoy a good experience. 4, returning home. And 5, integrating the experience. Here are the samples that I told you about, 5 blogs and 2 in-depth interviews. First section, taking the decision. The first interview, in this interview, the girl reports that she was going through a crisis, that she was feeling very sad, and that she was quite frankly depressed, and that is why she decided to undergo this experience. The second interview, that's a rare case, and it's completely opposite. You see that he's a punk that says, well, I was just staying in the community in the jungle, and I was offered a drink. I wasn't looking for it. I didn't know what I was taking. Apparently, he was invited to taking ayahuasca, and he did. So no previous work, no preparation for the experience. And one of the blogs reports the following: I first heard of ayahuasca through a podcast called Mysterious Universe. What is it they found? This is related to the previous aspect, the previous topic. The first interview points to the fact that this girl would never recommend the place where she took ayahuasca, and she went through a crisis because this Christian ayahuasca organization, she says, looked like a cult, like a sect. I wouldn't say so, but she was very critical of it. In the second example, block 4, that's quite habitual, and most of them share this, like they had previous information, they knew about some people going to Peru for an ayahuasca ceremony and decided to join them. And last but not least, another person that said that he had the call, felt the calling, felt identified with what he was reading, resonated with him, and decided to travel. Preparing the journey. Here we find previous criticism, good example, good experience, and people who usually criticize the experience, they say that's people who've never had the experience. Maybe those that have had the experience are quite idealistic, but those who don't know about it would attack it. Those who know about it would advocate for it. Second block, it indicates that the person was there in openness as is necessary. And this is explained in other parts of the blog. It's the right spirit to face these experiences, being open to whatever happens. And in the third case, what the person reports is that it's the girl, actually, belonging to interview number 1, and she says that that religious group that she joined actually asked whether the participants were taking any pills or had any psychological disorders, and that was something positive according to her. Third section, the facilitators, the care, the shamans, those that help in the experience. Again, the first interview, and it's an in-depth interview. She criticizes, as I said before, the organization that she joined because she would say that the shaman would interfere too much. He was always explaining what the trip was like, but she wanted to focus on what she was experiencing and not listen to somebody describing it. Block 3, that person was quite enthusiastic, and that person says that the experience was magnificent. The two final sections are these ones, returning home first and then integrating the experience. So returning home, the second interview, this person, he would say that he was living a punk lifestyle and that he underwent true transformation and he became a naturalistic therapist. So he really was touched by the experience. Another block. We haven't seen much from it, but this is an interesting section. He described that he didn't want to be around toxic people and that it made no sense to justify oneself constantly, and that is something that he took as a learning from the experience. The rest were very similar, and this one, this quote here, highlighting specifically because this person had a bad experience, bad trip, especially returning home. When she returned home, she felt that there was something didn't work with him. It was a man. He went to the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist said that that was not a schizoid outbreak or anything, but that the person was anxious because of what had been experienced, and he hadn't quite integrated it. So it's interesting for me to see and understand the puzzle of the ayahuasca experience, offering very different experiences. Very strong, very intense, and very different indeed. Next example, very typical, very fruitful for me and positive. Some piece of advice that the shaman gave them. And these comments are all of them very, very positive. It comes a moment in time where this person tries to convince all of the family to go for the experience, and the aunt commits to do this because it's had such a huge effect on her. And there's this leitmotif among all of them. They tend to say that personal changes in oneself end up changing all of one's environment. Great. Coming to an end now. This is the discussion, and we have summarized, of course, what we could draw from the different interviews. We've seen that as regards decision taking, motivation is very important. In most of the cases, it's really overwhelming. Most of the time, there is a personal crisis, which is the trigger. Many of them felt that things just were not going right in their life, and in some cases, it was out of curiosity. In the case of the punk participant, it was just by luck, just being in the right place at the right time. And it's very important to find the right place and to have some experience, some background, previous knowledge about what they're going to do, and a solid, sound background. Preparing the journey. Both those that did have some information, and also others like the punk participant that didn't have any information, would talk about openness at some point or another. They need to be open to whatever happens, and of course trust the shaman. Very important. It's recurring, this comment. He's the mediator, he's the helper, so you need to have confidence in him. So the need for a guide or shaman, the importance of the natural environment, being in nature and not taking it in cities. Some people criticize the fact of taking ayahuasca in sit-ins and being accompanied, having psychological support with your trip colleagues. Returning home, there are long-term effects, change in their lives. Most of them report this, and as I said before, they usually say that changing themselves ends up improving all of the environment at home, with the friends, family, and their job, in the workplace, and they feel this need of putting an end to toxic relations that they might have, integrating the experience in their life. So what this experience leaves in each and every one of them: healing of trauma that they might have. And some of the respondents refer the need for a peaceful environment, so having a life that's peaceful enough. They talk a lot about nature, among other things. Here are some of the references that we have used. We've used blogs and interviews, as I said before, and the ideas that I described are also part of many of these books. Thank you very much. That's all from us. I hope you found it interesting. Thank you.